to the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's January 10th, 2019, and this is episode 8. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just like my blog, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. Happy New Year, everyone. This is our first episode of 2019. New in theaters this week, starting on Friday, January 11th, are a couple of films. First up is A Dog's Way Home, which is a family film from Columbia Pictures. It's directed by Charles Martin Smith. Now, this movie is based on a book by the American author W. Bruce Cameron. Now, Cameron also wrote the books A Dog's Purpose and A Dog's Journey. A Dog's Purpose was made into a movie in 2017, and it follows this dog that gets basically reincarnated and how he looks for purpose through each of his lives with his different humans. And this particular movie follows a bit of a different narrative, it appears. It is a heartwarming adventure starring a dog named Bella, which is voiced by the actress Bryce Dallas Howard. Bella gets separated from her owner and embarks on an epic 400-mile journey across the U.S. after being separated from her beloved human. This is based on a book too, and if you've seen the trailer, it looks like we've seen the whole movie. So I would assume there's going to be a happy ending, but Bella befriends some kind of a mountain lion. It looks like they become BFFs, and Bella saves other people along the way. She saves an avalanche victim, and there's other kind of drama going on. Frankly, it looks to me like it's a remake of the Walt Disney film The Incredible Journey from 1963, if you remember that one, that had two dogs and a cat that get separated from their humans. And there was also a remake of that one in 1993 called Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. And I was actually happy to be reminded of those films because Disney's been in the remake business for a long time. I've got to remember that. Still, I digress. So there might be some additional peril and surprises in the film other than what we saw in the trailer, but we'll see. So A Dog's Way Home is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America for thematic elements, some peril, and language. Next up is The Upside, which is a comedy drama from STX Entertainment. It's directed by the American director Neil Berger. Berger directed The Illusionist in 2006, that film with Edward Horton, Limitless in 2011, that I believe starred Bradley Cooper. And then he also directed the very first Divergent film in 2014. So this film, The Upside, is actually it's a remake of a French film, and this French film came out in 2011. It was called The Untouchables, but it was inspired by a real life story. Actually, what I found is that this is the third remake of this French film, The Untouchables. There was one done in India, and also one done in Argentina. So now America gets its own version. So the summary is that it's a heartfelt comedy about a recently paroled ex-convict who is played by Kevin Hart, who strikes up an unlikely friendship with a paralyzed billionaire who is played by Bryan Cranston. The film also stars Nicole Kidman. It's rated PG-13 by the Motion Picture Association of America for suggestive content and drug use. It looks to me like the previews look good. It could be a pretty solid, comedy drama, and we'll just have to see. There was one film that snuck in last week. I didn't do a podcast last week, but it opened up on Friday, January 3rd. It's called Escape Room. This is also from Columbia Pictures. It's a mystery / psychological thriller about 6 strangers who find themselves in circumstances beyond their control and must use their wits to find the clues or die. So, this is not going to be my thing. So I hope people are enjoying Escape Room. But it's rated PG-13 by the Motion Picture Association of America for terror / perilous action, violence, some suggestive material, and language. And then finally, Bohemian Rhapsody, which, the wildly popular movie about Freddie Mercury and Queen that opened up last fall. It now has a sing-along version. So in our market here in Salt Lake City, it just showed it's now on screens. And I've talked about this movie in the past. It's I think it's an imperfect film, but a sing-along version could be really fun. You can just go release your inner rock star and enjoy that great music again, which I think was the best part of the film. So A Dog's Way Home, The Upside, and then Escape Room and Bohemian Rhapsody sing-along version, new in theaters. For our review section, I was able to see a lot of films over the holiday break, as I had hoped, and I put some brief reviews of these movies on my Twitter feed. It's the Movies Past and Present Twitter feed, which is at MoviesPAP, as in past and present. So if you're interested, you can check those out and get some ratings. The film I'd like to talk about in today's podcast is Vice, which I was able to see this week. It is a biopic of sorts about Dick Cheney, who, as we all know, was Vice President of the United States during the George W. Bush presidency. Now, Adam McKay directed the 2015 film The Big Short, which was about the 2008 financial crisis in the U.S. and really around the world. But he follows a very similar narrative style in Vice as he did in The Big Short, where he's got some interesting narrators and some different things that he employs to get his points across. And it's really, I think the filmmaking is really compelling and interesting. Of course, the film stars Christian Bale as Dick Cheney, who, as I'm sure you've seen, underwent a pretty great physical transformation. He put on a lot of weight, and they used a lot of different makeup and things for him to really age him to look like Dick Cheney. And Christian Bale's such a good actor, of course, and he does a very good job about playing the rather understated but quite calculating man that Dick Cheney really appeared to be. So the filmmakers to Adam McKay and team, of course, they come at it from quite a liberal bent, self-admittedly, but I also think, and I mean they express this, and I think it's true after having watched it, that they were also devoted to really finding the truth about everything as well as they could, given that they don't have access to all of the facts, and of course a lot of these people aren't talking or whatnot. So you need to save the end credits for a little kind of a joke and a sad commentary about the state of our country today, with regards to their interpretation of Dick Cheney's life and times. It's a bit of a rough watch in a lot of ways because, again, they're going through things that we lived through that were horrible and hard. The 9/11 attacks, the Iraq War, and a lot of the Bush presidency, which was just just a very difficult and challenging time for the country. Cheney is not really portrayed in a very flattering light. Of course, I think that they again were trying to go for the truth, but again, he's portrayed as a very devoted husband and loyal family man, but behind the scenes, a very ruthless yet quiet politician and actor on the world stage. One of the things that the film does, and not necessarily a spoiler alert, but there's a montage near the end of the film about things that happened in the country and in the world after the Bush presidency. And I felt in a way that the filmmakers were pointing the blame at Dick Cheney for a lot of the bad things that have happened. And I don't think that necessarily, and again, I could have been misinterpreting that whole segment. I really don't think that Dick Cheney was responsible for all of the world's problems. I don't think he helped much either. Again, he comes across as a pretty ambitious guy, both he and his wife Lynn, who is expertly played by Amy Adams. She's terrific. Actually, all the actors are great in the film. But it just reminded me of this oft-used quote by the British writer Lord Acton, which is, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men, even when they exercise influence and not authority. Still more when you superadd the tendency of the certainty of corruption by authority." That just kept going through my mind as I was watching this film unfold, and again to be reminded of a lot of bad events. So I think I can't just run out and go see Vice, because again it's pretty rough as far as there's some bad language, and also just the difficulties of seeing some of these or reliving some of these hard historical events that were all pretty raw. But it is really tour de force filmmaking, and kudos to Adam McKay and his team for pulling off a really unique way of interpreting and showing history. For Classic Cinema Corner, I just want to give you an update on the Turner Classic Movies Essentials project that I'm embarking on for 2019. As I've put on my blog, and I'll have links to all this in the notes on my blog, I'm reading or rereading a really great book that Turner Classic Movies helped produce a couple of years ago called The Essentials: 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter. It's written by frequent TCM collaborator Jeremy Arnold, who's just a great film writer and scholar, and he and the folks at TCM have compiled this list of 52 movies that they're not claiming that these are like the 52 best movies ever made, but that they're important and influential, and that they'll help you in your film going, kind of enhancing your film going repertory. So I started with the first film listed, which was Metropolis. I watched it on New Year's Day. And Metropolis is a 1927 silent film. It's a German film. It's directed by Fritz Lang. And hopefully you've had a chance to see this film. I'll give it a little bit of an overview, but I highly recommend it if you are into film history and if you don't mind watching silent films. So the story Metropolis is set in this segregated dystopian future. Yay, more dystopian future films, right? Although this could be considered maybe one of the originals, and it's still very, very cool. But it's one, in this dystopian future, the wealthy citizens live a life of luxury above ground in this very modern city full of high-rises and cool transportation and prosperity. And then a large group of people live underground and they're enslaved workers. And they are the ones who keep everything running in the city. And they're controlled by at least particularly one evil businessman. But when this businessman's son discovers or learns about the plight of these underground workers, he didn't really know that they even existed. But he sees a woman named Maria who is with a bunch of school children from the underground. And of course he's smitten with her, but also by her message about, again, the bad things that are going on underground with these enslaved people. He joins forces with her to launch a rebellion. However, his father, who also is working with this evil scientist, they've got some other stuff in mind. So, don't want to spoil it for you, but that's kind of how the plot is. This film is just well known for its innovative use of composite shots, of matte paintings, of really interesting lighting and editing. It's got stunning art direction and production design. Again, both above ground and underground have some really cool elements. One of my favorite sets is this underground church where Maria preaches, but it just looks so modern yet old, so German. Just really, really, a remarkable and distinctive look. Many moments in the film, also, as this is a quote from Jeremy Arnold in the book, but he says that many of these moments foreshadow the visuals in Hollywood horror films of the 1930s and then film noir of the 1940s, which are periods in that many German filmmakers, including Fritz Lang, the director of Metropolis, would be working in America and incorporating their techniques. Because, again, many of these European filmmakers got out of Europe prior and, of course, during the war and came to work in Hollywood. So, another interesting fact about Metropolis is that it had a very epic running length when it first opened. It was 153 minutes. And it was considered a flop. Like, it just did not, it was not a hit in Europe. And then in the US, Paramount Pictures released an edit. They had cut out an hour from that original 153 minute cut. And what resulted, though, was again, according to Jeremy Arnold in the book, is just that it was totally incoherent, and it really messed up with the film's narrative, of course, but just by chopping out so much of it. In 1984, there was a re-edit of the film released with a pop soundtrack, and it gave the film kind of cult pop status. And then in 2002, there were some newly discovered film elements that enabled a restoration to the film that was 118 minutes. And that one was considered really like the definitive version. However, in 2008, and you know all these dates, but I'm just wanting to be, accurate. In 2008, there was a major discovery. I believe it was in Argentina, where they found another print of the film that had a lot of elements that people hadn't, here at least in modern day, had never seen. So in 2010, then it was about 25 minutes were added into a cut, and that's now the one that has been circulating. That's the one that I watched, and it was available on Apple iTunes. I just rented it, but there's also a Blu-ray version, and I'll have links to that on the podcast notes on my blog. And the restoration debuted in Berlin and had its American premiere at the 2011 Turner Classic Film Festival in Hollywood. So, brief history of all these various cuts of Metropolis. But watch that 143-minute one that came out in 2010. I think that's considered to be the definitive one now. And it's readily available and definitely worth a watch. Okay, so for recommendations, thinking if you really want to get serious, check out Metropolis. Fascinating film. For films currently in theaters, I think if you haven't already seen it, go see Green Book. It's a real crowd pleaser, and I think it really is just solid film. Really terrific performances by Viggo Mortensen too, and Mahershala Ali. And then a couple animated films got to throw in. If you haven't seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that was a really cool, really, really a unique experience. And then, of course, Walt Disney Animation Studios' Ralph Breaks the Internet is still in theaters. And that one's a lot of fun and highly recommended. Well, that does it for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week and go have some fun at the movies. Thanks.